He was down to his final chance at turning his life around. But when Quentin paused to help a stranger struggling with her high heels, he missed the critical interview that could have changed everything. What he didn't know was she already held the keys to his future. Quentin Ray didn't own a clock, but he didn't need one. His body was a precision instrument, awake at 5 a.m. sharp every day. Slowly, he pushed himself up from the worn futon cushion on the hardwood floor of a friend's one-bedroom apartment in Tulsa. It wasn't truly his, but for the past 4 months, it had been the only stable roof over his head. The air was crisp, the silence profound, yet he moved with clear intent. He lit the stove, placing a rusted kettle over the flame. No coffee, but that wasn't his aim. He needed steam just enough to press his sole button-up shirt, pale blue, a frayed collar, a missing cuff button. Ironed just right, it could pass for office wear. Quentin never complained. Complaints didn't pay bills, secure interviews, or mend a 2-year resume gap that began the day his mom passed and concluded with an eviction notice. He pressed the shirt with meticulous care, inhaling the warm, damp air that filled the kitchen like a distant memory. Next, his shoes. Black leather, cracked at the sides but still intact. He dabbed a towel in cooking oil, gently rubbing the surface to coax out a faint shine. Interview at 10. Don't be late, he muttered to his reflection in the chipped mirror. By 7:30 he was out the door, a half-eaten granola bar in his pocket, bus fare in coins borrowed from Mr. Lawton downstairs, a retired veteran who favored loud westerns. Quentin had vowed to repay him the moment he landed a job. He walked to the bus stop, head held high, refusing to let desperation show. He'd read somewhere, perhaps a job forum, that how you present yourself matters more than your resume. So he carried himself like a man with options, not someone who hadn't seen a steady paycheck in over a year. It was a cool Tulsa morning, the sky still dusky, sidewalks mostly deserted. He walked the last 2 blocks instead of taking a second bus, partly to save the fare, mostly to clear his mind. Each step forward was a silent rehearsal. Strengths? I'm dependable. I show up. I care. Weakness? I never ask for help even when I need it. Why this job? I want a chance to build something I can be proud of. The building emerged just before 9:30. DuPont Grove's Tulsa branch. Glass panels, sharp edges. Not a towering skyscraper, but still an imposing sight for someone like him. Yet Quentin straightened his shoulders as he approached. This was it. Just a few steps from the crosswalk, something unusual caught his eye. A woman, elegant, impeccably dressed, balancing a designer tote and a coffee cup, was literally stuck. One of her heels had wedged deep into a crack between the sidewalk panels at Elm and 14th. She pulled, but the heel was snagged, the angle awkward. Cars slowed, some honked. She looked down, then around, frustrated, probably embarrassed. Quentin didn't think, he just stepped forward. Just as he reached her, his pocket buzzed. He ignored it. A quick decision was needed. Quentin didn't hesitate. The suit, the bus fare, the interview, all momentarily faded. Need a hand? He asked, crouching without waiting for a reply. The woman glanced down, startled. Up close, she seemed like someone who never missed a hair appointment. Sharp bob, flawless makeup, silk blouse under a navy trench coat. Likely late 30s, maybe older, but completely composed. The kind of woman who commands a room without a word. I don't know what happened, she said, attempting a laugh, but her voice carried the faint edge of panic people hide. No worries, Quentin replied, kneeling, gently gripping the base of her heel. You're stuck right in the crack. Deep too. She braced herself against a nearby pole. Watch the cars, she muttered, more to herself. People drive like maniacs down here, I swear. Quentin smiled, shifting the heel side to side. Yeah, they don't slow down for anybody unless there are sirens. The shoe wouldn't budge at first. It was tightly wedged, the rubber sole beginning to peel. The woman grimaced, looking at it. I just bought these, she sighed. 5th pair this month. Quentin chuckled. I've had these shoes since junior year of high school. Can't imagine 5 in a month. Pause. She looked down at him, her expression softening slightly. You in a rush? He didn't answer immediately. A part of him screamed yes, that he had an interview, that he might be late, that this was his only shot. Instead he gave a quiet, honest response. Sort of. But I'm not leaving you stuck here. With one more twist, the heel popped free. She stumbled slightly and he caught her elbow just in time. There we go, he said. Thank you, she exhaled, adjusting her shoe. Seriously. I thought I was going to have to yank my foot out and go barefoot. That'd be one way to make an entrance. She smiled genuinely now. So what's your name? Quentin, he said, standing, brushing off his pants. Quentin Ray. Well, Quentin Ray, thank you. I owe you one. She checked her watch and winced. I'm actually late myself. Then she walked off, weaving through the crowd with a stride that discouraged further conversation. Just like that, she was gone. Quentin finally checked his own watch. 9:54. His chest tightened. The interview was at 10. The building's still across the street. He ran, dodging a delivery truck, nearly dropping his resume folder. The reception desk came into view as he burst through the front doors, trying to mask his panic with a forced smile. Hi, I'm here for an interview, he said, breathless. With DuPont Grove. 10 o'clock, name's Quentin Ray. The receptionist looked at him calmly, then at her computer. She clicked a few times, then offered a polite smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. I'm sorry, Mr. Ray. Miss Ames was only scheduled until 10. She's already stepped out. Quentin blinked. Wait, can you check? I helped someone on the street. It was just a few minutes. She left about 5 minutes ago. I'm sorry. He stood there, still clutching the folder as if it held immense weight, immense meaning. His breath was shallow, but he forced it steady. He wouldn't appear angry or desperate. He forced the same practiced smile and nodded once. Thank you. He walked out slowly this time, careful not to let the door swing too hard behind him. The world outside felt amplified now. Buses faster, the sun hotter. He sat down on the same bench he'd passed earlier, letting the folder rest on his knees. For a moment the thought crept in, maybe I blew it. Maybe I should have kept walking. But then he thought of that woman, her embarrassment, how no one else had stopped. And even though his hands were sweating and his stomach was empty, he told himself, doing the right thing doesn't always come with a reward, but it's still the right thing. Quentin remained on that bench for a long time, watching people stream in and out of the office building as if it were just another Tuesday. A day where things worked out, where meetings happened, where coffee grew cold on polished desks amidst talk of projections. He imagined the office he didn't see, the chair he didn't sit in, the words he didn't get to say. The folder on his lap felt heavier, as if it knew it was useless. He didn't move until the shade shifted and the concrete warmed beneath him. Then slowly he stood, adjusted his shirt, and walked 3 blocks to the corner store where Mr. Lawton's cousin worked the register. He used his last $2 for a bottle of water and a gas station sandwich that tasted of cardboard and shame. Back at the apartment, Mr. Lawton was asleep in his recliner, mouth agape, the TV blaring news from Kansas. Quentin didn't wake him. He went into the kitchen, leaned on the counter, and stared blankly for a long time. That night he said little when his friend Corey came home from his diner shift. Quentin just gave a thumbs up and mumbled, "Interview went fine." He didn't want sympathy, didn't want Corey to offer platitudes like, "It wasn't meant to be," or "Your time will come." He just wanted silence. But silence wasn't peace when his thoughts circled the same question. Why didn't I just say I had somewhere to be? What if she could have gotten herself out? Was she even that stuck? He didn't sleep much that night. He lay flat on the futon, hands behind his head, listening to pipes creak and the neighbor's dog bark intermittently until the sky began to bleed into gray. The next morning he checked his email anyway. Nothing. Again after lunch. Still nothing. By the end of the second day he stopped checking. He knew how this worked. They didn't call latecomers even with a story. They hired the guy who was 5 minutes early in a sharper suit, with a laptop bag that didn't fray. He began searching for another opening, anything that didn't demand college degrees or pristine resumes. An overnight stalker at the grocery, a part-time janitor at a private school, office cleaning, car washing, anything that meant moving forward. It was late afternoon on Thursday when the call came. He didn't recognize the number, thinking it might be a telemarketer or someone inquiring about his old bike listed online. He let it ring once, twice, then answered. "Hello. Boss. Is this Mr. Quentin Ray?" His voice stiffened slightly. "Speaking. This is Laura Finch, assistant to Miss Marion DuPont." Quentin stood so fast he knocked over his chair. It clattered behind him, barely registered. Yes, she continued smoothly as if unaware of his stumble. "Miss DuPont would like to reschedule your interview for tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock sharp at the same location. She'll be conducting it herself. Quentin didn't breathe for a moment. Wait, did she say she wants to, her? That's correct, Alora replied. Is that time okay with you? Yeah. Absolutely. Yes. Wonderful. You'll check in with the front desk when you arrive. Before he could ask why or how, the line clicked. She was gone. Quentin stood in the kitchen, phone still pressed to his ear, mouth agape. Mr. Lawton, roused by the noise, raised an eyebrow from his recliner. You all right, son? Quentin looked at him, a genuine smile spreading across his face. I think so, Mr. Lawton. I think something just turned around. But he couldn't yet grasp how strange, surprising, and profoundly personal things were about to become. Quentin didn't sleep that night either, but for a wholly different reason. His mind was sharp, electric. Every time he closed his eyes, it rewound to that crosswalk on Elm and 14th. The woman's expression, the fleeting smile, her anonymous disappearance. He remembered me. He hadn't even looked his best. Shirt wrinkled from sweat, tie slightly askew. All he had offered was sincerity, and apparently that had been enough. By 6 a.m. he was dressed and ready. Shirt re-ironed with the steam trick, shoes freshly shined with cooking oil. He'd even stitched the cuff with a borrowed needle and thread from the corner laundry. Nothing fancy, but it held. Corey offered to drive him this time. No bus, he said, jingling his keys. You're walking into that place on time and breathing normal. I got 20 on gas and half a granola bar for luck. The drive took 10 minutes. Quentin barely spoke. At 8 a.m. he stood in the building lobby, heart pounding. The receptionist offered a different look this time. Not cold, not dismissive, just curious. You can go up to the 6th floor. Miss DuPont's office is at the end of the hall. No waiting room, no assistant escorting him, just straight to the top. The elevator ride was silent and swift. Quentin checked his breath, wiped his palms on his slacks, then knocked once. Come in, came a voice, warm, direct. He stepped inside, and there she was, seated behind a glass desk, papers neatly stacked, phone off to the side. She wore a charcoal blouse with simple gold jewelry, the same bobbed haircut, the same calm confidence. I was hoping it was you, she said, smiling. Didn't know your name until 2 days ago, but I've been thinking about you. Quentin struggled to find his voice. You're Miss DuPont? Marion, she said, standing to shake his hand. Call me Marion. He stepped forward, taking her hand. Firm grip, steady eye contact. I had no idea, he said. You didn't say anything. I was late to a board meeting, she replied. But after I got my heel unstuck and got upstairs, I saw the security footage. You at the front desk, sweaty, looking wrecked. That kind of thing sticks with you. He laughed nervously. Not exactly the first impression I wanted to make. You made the right one, she countered. I've interviewed 100 people for the analyst program. Most are forgettable. They come in, say the right things, wear the right shoes, but they don't do anything real. She motioned for him to sit. I want to hear about you. No resume talk. Tell me who you are. Quentin took a breath, then began. He told her about growing up in Sepulpa, losing his mom, dropping out of college to handle things that couldn't wait. He spoke of countless job applications, no calls back, couch surfing, and showing up daily at the workforce office as if it were a job in itself. I'm not trying to win points, he concluded. I just want to work. I want to contribute. Marion listened without interruption. She didn't take notes or check the clock. When he finished, she leaned back slightly. Ever worked with data? A little, he said. I taught myself Excel through YouTube. Tracked bills, groceries, budget plans. Even made a little app mock-up for grocery stores. Tried to pitch it once, but it went nowhere. Show me. He blinked. What? Pull it up. I don't have a laptop. She slid one across the table. You've got 10 minutes. His hands moved slower than he wanted, but he recalled the links, pulled up screenshots he'd saved in his email drafts, and walked her through each tab, each function. She watched, never interrupting. When he finished, the room fell silent again. You built that with no training? Just trial and error. Marion smiled. I like people who figure things out. She stood again. That'll be all for today. He stood too, unsure what that meant. No offer, no rejection, just a blank conclusion. But as he walked out, a thought flickered. Maybe this wasn't about a job anymore. Maybe she was testing something else entirely. The air outside the building felt different this time. Not lighter, not heavier, just uncertain, as if it wasn't finished with him yet. Quentin walked down 6th Street in silence, phone clutched in his hand, replaying every second of that meeting with Marion DuPont. The way she watched him, never flinching or filling the space with small talk. No sugarcoating, no promises, just, "That'll be all for today." He wasn't even sure it was an interview. It felt more like an assessment, as if she was looking past his words, into who he was beneath it all. Corey picked him up 20 minutes later. "So?" he asked, tapping the steering wheel. "How'd it go?" Quentin didn't answer immediately. "I don't know, man," he finally said. "I think it went good, but also not. I can't tell if she was impressed or testing me. Maybe both." They didn't talk much the rest of the ride. That night, Quentin sat at the kitchen table, still in the same clothes, staring at a blank piece of paper. He wanted to write down everything she said, every look, every question she didn't ask, but it all felt slippery, like trying to catch steam in his hands. He didn't sleep much again, but this time it wasn't fear keeping him awake. It was curiosity. Why reschedule the interview herself? Why not just send a polite rejection? Why ask him to show something, then end it without a hint of her thoughts? By morning the questions were gnawing at him. Then the email came. Simple, direct. Subject: Thursday. From Alora Finch. Message: Miss DuPont would like you to return Thursday at 1 p.m. She has something she'd like to show you. Bring nothing. He stared at the words, rereading them 5 times. Bring nothing. It sounded more like a summons than a second interview. Thursday couldn't come fast enough. When it did, he wore the same outfit, pressed clean, shoes shined again. This time he arrived 10 minutes early, sitting in the lobby with his back straight, hands folded in his lap. At exactly 1 p.m. the elevator dinged. Alora stood waiting on the 6th floor. "This way," she said. Quentin followed, his footsteps softer than usual. But instead of leading him back to Marion's office, Alora turned left, opening a different door that led into a small, glass-walled conference room. Inside, Marion was seated at the head of the table, flanked by 2 men and a woman. All dressed in what he could only describe as money. Quiet, expensive clothing, watches that didn't tick, confidence that didn't ask for permission. Quentin's throat went dry. "Come in," Marion said, gesturing to the open seat. He sat, spine straight, palms sweating under the table. "This," Marion stated, "is not an interview." One of the men glanced at the others, then at Quentin. "We asked Marion to bring someone who could think on their feet, someone who could show good judgment under pressure. She said she had someone in mind." Quentin blinked. "Me?" Marion nodded. "That morning you helped me. You had no reason to stop. You were late, you had something at stake, but you chose someone else's problem over your own risk." The woman to her left added, "We run a community outreach arm within DuPont Grove. It's small but growing. We partner with schools, local businesses, mentorship programs. We've been talking about expanding leadership, bringing in people who know struggle." Quentin leaned in slightly, still trying to catch up. "So, is this a job?" "Not exactly," Marion said. "It's a trial. A 30-day placement. You'll work directly with our outreach coordinator, see how you handle the day-to-day. If it works, we bring you on full-time." Quentin sat frozen, unsure what to say. "This isn't about degrees," one of the men added. "It's about instinct. And you've already shown that." Quentin exhaled, long and slow. "I'll do it," he said. "All of it. Whatever you need." The room finally broke into smiles. "Good," Marion said. "Report to Building B, back entrance, 8 a.m. Monday." She stood and extended her hand. "This is yours to lose, Quentin Ray." But he didn't know yet that this trial would push him harder than anything he'd faced before. And that someone in that room had already decided to make it harder. Quentin walked out of the building that Thursday feeling as if he'd been handed something fragile, something he absolutely couldn't drop. It wasn't a job offer in the traditional sense. It was more of a dare, a test disguised as an opportunity. The phrase, "This is yours to lose," echoed in his mind, because it sounded less like trust and more like a warning. Still, Monday morning arrived swiftly. Quentin was awake before sunrise. He didn't wear the suit this time. The email instructed, "Dress ready to move," so he wore jeans, a clean tee and his same shoes, polished again but showing wear on the soles. Out of habit, he tucked a notebook into his back pocket. Building B was older, tucked behind the corporate campus near the loading dock. It looked more like a storage facility than a corporate extension. A single glass door, a keypad, and a taped paper sign that read Community Team, Use Back Entrance. When he stepped inside, the place defied expectations. Long tables, stacks of donation bins, faded posters for food drives and job fairs, a whiteboard with a schedule scrawled in 4 different handwritings. Someone had even drawn a smiley face next to Wednesday, youth meeting. Behind the desk sat a tall woman with copper curls tied back in a loose knot. She wore work boots, a faded polo shirt, and thick-rimmed glasses. "You must be Quentin," she said, standing. "Yeah, you're the outreach coordinator?" "That's me. Jessa Barron. Been here 6 years, long enough to know how wild it can get." She reached out to shake his hand, then gestured around the room. "This is home base. Looks like chaos, but it works. You'll be shadowing me. We've got 4 active partnerships this month. Youth mentorship, senior meals, neighborhood cleanups, and the Second Start program. That last one's for guys like you, people trying to get back in." Quentin raised an eyebrow. "Like me?" "No offense," she said, cracking a grin. "It's a good thing. We want people who get it, who've lived it." They spent the morning sorting donated clothes and fielding calls from local schools. By noon, Quentin was hauling folding tables to a rec center on 38th Street. By 3 p.m. he was scrubbing graffiti off a fence with a dozen high school volunteers. It wasn't glamorous, but it felt real. Jessa worked him hard. No shortcuts, no special treatment. She said little about Marion or the corporate office, just gave him tasks, observed his handling of them, and moved on. That first week blurred by. Every day was different. He learned to build spreadsheets, write grant updates, wrangle teenage volunteers, and diffuse tension between community members who hadn't trusted do-gooders in years. But by the second week things got complicated. On a rainy Tuesday, Quentin was assigned to oversee a prep meeting at the Second Start shelter. Jessa was out sick and someone had to step in. "I'm trusting you with this," she told him over the phone. "Don't just follow a checklist. Talk to them. Hear them." So he did. He shook hands with every resident in the shelter, asked about their days, sat through complaints about the food, and listened as a man named Vernon explained how he'd lost everything after one medical bill. Quentin felt it deep in his gut. He'd been so close to this himself. One wrong step and he might have been Vernon. After the meeting, he helped clean up and made a mental note to report everything back to Jessa. But the next day he was called into a conference room by someone he'd never met. Rodney Hales, one of the 3 men from the earlier round table. "Take a seat," Rodney said, flipping through a manila folder. "I've been hearing about you." Quentin sat slowly, unsure where this was headed. Rodney closed the folder and looked him dead in the eye. "I want to be clear. This isn't a guaranteed job. You're here because Marion thinks there's something in you. That doesn't mean you've proven anything yet." Quentin nodded. "I understand." Rodney leaned forward. "Do you? Because what you're doing is the easy part. Showing up, smiling, lifting boxes. Anyone can do that. What happens when things go sideways?" Quentin didn't answer immediately. He knew this wasn't a resume question. "I adapt," he finally said. "I don't quit." Rodney studied him for a moment longer. "Good. Let's see if you mean that." But Quentin had no idea that the real test was already in motion, and it had nothing to do with lifting boxes. The next morning, Quentin arrived at Building B just before 7:45. Jessa still hadn't returned, flew apparently, and someone named Caden, a junior coordinator with more attitude than experience, was manning the front desk. "Second Start called," Caden said, sipping an energy drink without looking up. "They're short on hands again. Said they asked for you specifically." Quentin nodded. "All right. I'll head there now." He grabbed a supply kit from the back. Paper goods, hand sanitizer, printouts for the resource board, and made the 20-minute bus ride across town. When he got there, something felt off. The air was tense. The usual volunteers weren't around. A few of the residents he'd chatted with earlier that week were pacing the lobby, whispering low. Then out of the corner of his eye, he spotted Vernon, the man who'd told him about losing everything after one medical bill. Vernon looked frustrated, holding a clipboard and muttering under his breath. "You all right?" Quentin asked. Vernon looked up. "Man, they're about to throw out 3 people. Paperwork stuff. Said they didn't sign forms from last month, but none of them got the forms in the first place." Quentin frowned. Who said that? Vernon motioned toward a back room. New admin doesn't even know half the names here. Quentin didn't know if he was supposed to get involved, but something didn't sit right. He went to the office, knocked and stepped in. A young woman at a desk, mid-20s with a badge that read, Tina Brost, Admin Coordinator, looked up. She was typing furiously. Can I help you? I heard there's an issue with some of the residents' paperwork, Quentin said carefully. Yeah, 3 of them failed to update their eligibility forms. They were supposed to get them signed last month. No form, no stay. It's policy. Quentin paused. Do you know if they received the forms? Tina sighed. Look, I just started here. I'm going off records. If it's not in the file, it doesn't exist. He didn't want to argue. He wasn't staff, not really. But these weren't just names on a list. They were people he'd met, people who needed a roof more than rules. He walked back to the front room and found Vernon again. Do you know where those guys are now? They're on the back patio, probably packing. Quentin went straight to them. An older man with a limp, a woman with 2 kids, and a teenager who couldn't have been more than 19. You don't have to leave yet, he said. The woman looked up, eyes glassy. They told us to go. Not yet. I'm making some calls. He stepped aside, took out his phone and called Jessa. Even though she was sick, she picked up on the 3rd ring, voice raspy. You all right? I need help, he said. They're about to evict 3 people at Second Start over missing forms, but it sounds like they were never given the paperwork in the first place. Hold on, she said, coughing. Check the brown file cabinet behind the front desk, bottom drawer. Look for resident logs from March. If the forms were distributed, there'll be signatures. Quentin ran back inside. Tina looked up. What are you doing? I just need to check something. It'll take 2 minutes. She didn't stop him. Maybe she didn't care. Maybe she didn't believe he'd find anything. But in that bottom drawer, behind a stack of outdated brochures, was a March logbook. He flipped through pages until he found the names. 3 lines, all marked with, not applicable, forms not printed. He took a photo of the page, printed a copy with the office printer and brought it straight to Tina. She stared at the paper for a second, then looked up at him. I didn't know. You do now. Tina didn't say thank you, but she didn't argue either. By noon, the 3 residents had their updated forms, a new deadline to return them signed, and a spot still waiting for them. Vernon clapped him on the back. Man, I don't know who you are, but you got it. We need more people like you. Quentin just smiled. He didn't tell anyone about it at first. Not Jessa, not Caden, not Marion. He didn't do it to earn points, he just couldn't walk away. But 2 days later, Marion called him into her office and the first thing she said was, "Tell me about Tuesday at Second Start." Quentin sat across from Marion in her office again, this time in a chair that somehow felt smaller than before. She folded her hands, her expression unreadable. I got 3 calls yesterday, she said, eyes fixed on him. 1 from the shelter director, 1 from the admin you confronted, and 1 from a resident named Vernon. Quentin didn't flinch. He kept his voice calm. They were going to push people out over forms they never got. I didn't think that was right. It wasn't, Marion said. You did the right thing. That's not why you're here. He blinked. It's not. She leaned back slightly. I wanted to see if you'd mention it. You didn't. Not to Jessa, not to Caden, not to anyone. I didn't think I needed to. That's what impressed me. She stood, walked slowly to the window, then turned back. Most people, especially when they're being tested, feel the need to show how good they are. They mention every little win. You didn't. You handled it and you moved on. Quentin shifted in his seat. It wasn't about me. It was about them. She nodded. Exactly. There was a long pause between them, one that didn't feel awkward, just heavy with meaning. I didn't bring you here for charity, Quentin, she said. I brought you here because we need people who understand why this work matters, not just how to do it. He looked at her, searching for the catch. So what now? She walked back to her desk, pulled a folder from a drawer and set it in front of him. You know what our community branch looks like on the ground, in the field. What you haven't seen is what it looks like when we build from the inside. She opened the folder. Inside were blueprints, schedules, grant plans, a brand new community program. Lift Tulsa, a citywide partnership between DuPont Grove and 3 other local organizations. We're launching this in 3 months and we need someone who can bridge both sides. the boardroom in the street. Someone who can walk into a bank at 10 a.m. and a food pantry at 3 p.m. and not change who they are. Quentin raised an eyebrow. You want me to run it? No, she said. Not yet. That'd be too much too fast. But I want you in the room. I want you learning everything. Strategy, funding, people management. I want to build you up for something bigger. He stared at the folder again. This doesn't feel real, he said. I know, she replied. It didn't for me either when I got my first shot. But someone gave it to me. I'm giving it to you. Quentin closed the folder slowly, still wrapping his head around it. Then she said something he didn't expect. You're going to meet people who underestimate you. Some won't say it, but you'll feel it. They'll wonder if you belong. And every time they question it, they'll be telling on themselves, not you. Quentin's throat tightened. He didn't know how to respond to that. She went on quieter now. I've been in rooms where I was the only woman, rooms where the money talked over me and the power ignored me. I stopped waiting for approval. So should you. He looked up. Why me, though? Marion walked around the desk and leaned on its edge. Because when I was stuck on the street in heels I regret buying, looking helpless, you didn't hesitate. You didn't even ask who I was. You just helped. A beat passed. That tells me more than any resume ever could. Quentin stood slowly. Then I'm in. I'm all in. She extended her hand not as a test this time but as a promise. Good. We start Monday. Real work this time. You'll sit in on planning sessions, partner meetings and strategy calls. Bring questions. Bring opinions. He laughed. I've got both. Then we're in business. As he walked back through the hallway, past the glass doors and out into the warm Oklahoma sun, it hit him. This wasn't just a second chance. It was the first real one. But not everyone in the company believed he belonged there, and someone was already planning to make that painfully clear. The following Monday, Quentin arrived at DuPont Grove headquarters just before 8 a.m. Not in work boots or jeans this time, but in a crisp navy shirt and slacks that Jessa had helped him pick out from a thrift store 2 days earlier. It's time they see what you already know, she'd said with a wink. Inside, the energy was different. He wasn't shadowing today, wasn't lifting boxes or sorting canned goods. He was part of the planning team now, sitting at a table with people who had titles, budgets, and big expectations. The meeting started in the West Conference Room, a sleek space with polished tables, panoramic city views, and a projector quietly humming from the ceiling. Marion stood at the front, leading the presentation for Lift Tulsa. Next to her, a clean-cut man in a tailored blazer tapped through the slides. Quentin recognized him immediately. Rodney Hales. Rodney didn't look at him when he walked in, barely acknowledged him with a nod. Still, Quentin took his seat, opened his notepad and kept his posture strong. Our goal is to launch Lift Tulsa with 2 pillars. Job training and community housing, Marion began. We'll be working with 3 partner organizations and matching them with internal teams. This isn't just outreach, it's investment. She turned to face the table. And I've asked Quentin Ray to join these early meetings because he's already been doing the work quietly for weeks. His insights are going to matter here. That drew some glances, a few stiff smiles. Rodney shifted his pen between his fingers. When Marion handed the floor over for discussion, Quentin stayed quiet at first, observing the rhythm. People pitched ideas, debated timelines, adjusted budgets. But when the topic turned to outreach, actual fieldwork, he cleared his throat. Can I say something? The room went quiet. Marion gave a small nod. Most of the people we're trying to help don't trust institutions, Quentin began. They've been told before that someone's coming to fix things, but those people usually leave by the second week. If this is going to work, we can't just send flyers or launch a nice-looking site. We've got to show up over and over until it doesn't feel like charity. It feels like a relationship. A woman across the table nodded thoughtfully. Another scribbled something in her notes. Rodney, however, spoke up. Quentin, I appreciate the sentiment, but this is a high-budget initiative. We can't afford to center everything on soft trust building. There are deadlines, deliverables. Quentin didn't flinch. Then we're building something that'll crumble the second we leave. Rodney said nothing, just looked toward Marion. She smiled. That's exactly why he's here. After the meeting, as the room cleared, Rodney caught Quentin by the coffee table. You're walking a fine line, he said quietly. Marion's backing you now, But eventually people are going to ask what makes you qualified to be here. Quentin met his gaze. Maybe they should ask what made you forget why this place was built in the first place. Rodney gave a cold smile, tapped his cup and walked away. Quentin didn't tell Marion about it. He didn't need to. He wasn't here to get caught up in office politics. He was here because people like Vernon, the mother with 2 kids, the teen on the shelter patio, they deserved more than systems built from spreadsheets. That week he jumped into the work with both feet. He sat in on budget sessions, learning how money actually moved between partners. He spent afternoons mapping local neighborhoods in need of Wi-Fi hotspots and job support. He built a communication plan for the new mentorship program and even stayed late to help rewrite the intake forms for better clarity. One night, while locking up after everyone else had left, he caught a glimpse of himself in the dark glass of the lobby door. Same face, same eyes, but standing straighter now. He wasn't just surviving anymore, he was building something. And for the first time in years he truly believed that this path could lead somewhere. But while Quentin worked late to help others, someone else had started poking through his records, digging for something they could use to knock him down. It was a quiet Thursday evening when it came to a head. Quentin had just wrapped up a long meeting at the local rec center. The youth mentorship program was finally moving forward. Funding secured, volunteers prepped, and pilot dates on the calendar. He stayed late to lock up, then walked back to the office to drop off a few signed forms. As he reached his desk in Building B, there was a folded envelope sitting on his keyboard. No name, no note. Inside, a printout of his arrest record from 2 years ago, an unpaid parking ticket that spiraled into a suspended license and eventually a short overnight stay in county jail when he got pulled over during a job delivery. He tried to explain it during past job interviews. Most didn't get past that line on the background check. Now someone at DuPont Grove had dug it up and dropped it on his desk. He stared at it for a long minute, jaw tight, heart beating slower than usual. Then he tucked it into his folder and went straight to Marion's office. She was still there, her heels kicked off under the desk, reading grant proposals with a mug of cold tea beside her. He held out the envelope. She opened it, scanned the paper, then looked up at him without flinching. "I figured this might come up eventually," she said. "HR flagged it. I overruled them. Why didn't you ask me about it?" "Because I wanted to see who you were now, not who you were on paper." She leaned back in her chair, her tone sharpening. "But someone clearly wants this to matter more than it should. I'll find out who." Quentin stood still, that old weight creeping in, the one that whispers, "This is where it ends." "I don't want trouble," he said. "I just want to work." Marion shook her head. "You think this disqualifies you? Let me tell you something." She walked over to a cabinet, opened the bottom drawer and pulled out a file of her own. "See this? When I was 24, I nearly lost my business over a loan I co-signed for someone who vanished the next month. Debt collectors showed up at my office. I sat in a courtroom next to my mother, praying the judge wouldn't liquidate everything." She dropped the file on the table. "You want to build anything that matters, Quentin, you better expect people to test your past. But they don't define your future. You do." He exhaled slowly. "So what now?" "Now," she said, "you get back to work. And I'll handle the rest." The next morning Rodney Hales was reassigned, quietly without fanfare, to a different department in another state. Quentin never asked questions. Marion never gave answers. But the tension that had been hovering quietly disappeared. From there things moved fast. The Lift Tulsa project launched. Quentin was named assistant coordinator within 3 weeks, then full coordinator 3 months later. He found himself managing teams, meeting with city leaders, and even returning to the same shelter he once helped save 3 residents from eviction. This time not as a volunteer but as a partner at a press event. One afternoon a local journalist asked him what changed everything for him. He didn't hesitate. "A stuck heel," he said. People laughed politely but he meant it. After the cameras left, he walked out onto the sidewalk, the same block where he'd first seen Marion struggling to free her shoe. He stood there for a moment looking at the crack in the pavement. So much had started right there. He thought of the people who'd helped him. Mr. Lawton, Corey, Jessa. People who didn't have much but gave what they could. And he thought of everyone who wouldn't stop to help someone unless there was a spotlight or a reward. That's what people forget sometimes, he mused. Kindness isn't supposed to be convenient. It's supposed to be true. He walked back to the office, passing two teenagers arguing on the corner. One of them dropped a folder of papers. Without thinking, Quentin bent down, picked them up and handed them back. "Thanks, man," the kid said, nodding. "No problem," Quentin said, walking away. Because helping someone when no one's watching, that's the part of the resume that actually matters. If this story moved you even a little, share it with someone who needs to be reminded that doing the right thing always counts. And if you're building your own story right now, keep going. The right people are watching.